Hi, my name's Beth, and you may already be a subscriber to GoSquared Weekly and have seen the interviews that we do with SaaS founders and experts. And we're trying something a little bit new today, and we are doing the interview over Zoom. So hopefully you like it, and let's take a look.
My name is CH Daniel, and I'm currently building this tool called Price Unlock. It helps founders find and set the perfect pricing for their SaaS tool, whether it's A/B testing or price optimization or localized pricing. However, I run my main business, which is what I mentioned earlier, or I should say later if you're going to put this at the beginning. Legit Check by CH it's an authentication company for luxury items. Think clothing, sneakers, watches, and bags. I also run the Reddit SaaS community where at the moment, as of June 2021, we have almost 20,000 subscribers. And if any of these sound interesting to you, I write a monthly investors update, despite the fact that I'm bootstrapped, to my mom and to investors called Dear Mom Investors. And my investors are those who invest in me with their attention. So if any of these sounded interesting, I invite you to invest in me with your monthly 5-10 minutes. If not, I'll do my best to catch you later with something else at a later point in life.
I did not know you did that. That's such a good idea.
Yeah, I do it so I can have a log. So if I ever make it in the society's terms based on what we just
I
discussed,
feel like you're already doing pretty well.
I'm not done, so we'll see about that. But if I make it in society's terms, we will have had a log of how it went month to month and how it was because how the thinking was because you can look at Steve Jobs or whatever, but one, I wish I knew what Steve Jobs did specifically in March 1983. Like we have Jeff Bezos's annual letters, but what about October 1996 or
Yeah, yeah.
five? Because Prime comes out in 2004, but I'm more interested not in what happens after Prime is out. I'm more
Mm,
interested in that time before Prime came out, because that's when the magic happened.
mm.
And is that thing of if somebody is successful with something, look at what led up to that. That's where the value is. Where it was probably very shitty back then, especially if they turned the company. Show me the trenches.
Mm.
Show me the day-to-day fight of that moment.
Found that they work really well. Our audience is very much a kind of indie hacker, SaaS builder kind of person. And I definitely notice a lot of that kind of content being shared in the communities, like people like the AMAs that you do, right? Like people are really interested in learning from other people in a in what feels a lot more authentic than if you look at like kind of bigger companies and how they, if you read an interview with somebody who's the CEO of a big kind of old-fashioned corporate company, then they're not sharing anywhere near the same kind of things.
Yeah, and it's all
But
PR'd, or at least
yeah.
it's had the layer of makeup. Whereas, and that's something I try to do in the AMAs when I do them audio as well. Because if it's text, somebody else is going to do it for me. I try to humanize the person and to say, uh, look, it's people are. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new, but people are used to, let's put this person on the podium and say, look at how great they are. But let's start with something. Tell us about. Uh, I try to do this thing. I don't always manage to do it. Tell us three things where it was painful, where it really hurt. I'll
Mm,
choose one. Let's go a bit deeper into that, because then, as you said, that's something people are attracted to. Look at this person; they've achieved something, but they're also human. They're closer to me. They've experienced this day to day, because it's the Instagram effect, the highlight reel, where yes, they've done this and this and that, and here's how they got to 100 million ARR in 0.2 seconds,
mm,
and then you're like, that's so far away from me.
mm.
And I think to piggyback on what you were saying, I think that's what's attractive towards this audience, and why the indie hacker audience really, because I spent a lot of time thinking about why is there success behind a group of people who are small in terms of a business size. And then when they get past that stage of being small, those who get out, they leave that behind and they say, I'm not sharing that much because I'm not an indie hacker anymore. But the question is, why are we attracted to this smaller business in the first place? And I don't mean I mean the stage where you're small. And I think that that's my best answer at the moment. I'm still looking into this question, this idea of I can relate to this person and what they're doing, and I've got more to learn from them than from the PR statement or the Masters of Scale podcast
Yeah.
to take a quick jab at somebody else. But no, I think that podcast is great actually. But there's different formats of a podcast and different types of lessons. And I think Masters of Scale or the PR statement is more you learn through nature. You learn by looking at what they've done, not necessarily what they say.
Yeah, and it's all different content for different audiences, right? Like the building in public movement was something I actually really wanted to ask you about, because I think that's a completely different way of approaching work and what you share. And, you know, like you said, companies saying, well, actually, this was one of the things that we failed at, or you never get that from a big corporation. It's always had that gloss on it. And one of the things that I've definitely found the more I've got involved in SaaS communities and SaaS forums is that people are so generous with their time and their knowledge and their advice. Like, you post a question, you reach out to someone, and people are more than willing to chat with you. And I've found that so engaging, and I wonder if that's part of why this kind of content is popular. It's not just because people are being honest, but also because it really does make you feel part of something.
Yeah, I think a couple of things, if I had to guess. One is it's probably still the early days of SaaS or this indie hacker group. I can't put my finger on exactly what is that. It's the early days of, but I can feel it. That is the early days, because I can tell you for sure that in 3 years, people are not going to be as generous, because there's going to be this wave of, oh, we've heard from X, Y, and Z person. You can, and I'm sharing this with the people who are listening to this, a bit of a, I don't want to call it trick because you're not tricking anybody, but a bit of a tip is if you start a podcast, or it doesn't have to be huge, you don't have to be Joe Rogan, but somebody told me this, Noah Bragg from Potion. He said, look, because podcast analytics aren't super, not transparent, aren't perfect, people can't really do a background check on you and say, how many listens does this radio station have, or this website, because we can see into similar web how many views they have. So think of it this way, you can just compare these two ways, which is I can go ask person X who I look up to for advice in a private Twitter conversation, but they're not going to get that much out of it. Of course, they can get that personal satisfaction out of it and all that stuff. Or I can invite them on a podcast, and then now their advice is streamed to multiple people. So there's more to it than just a conversation that gets lost into eternity. So I can tell you for sure that in a couple of years, that's not going to be that actionable anymore. So strike the iron while it's hot. And yes, there is a lot of benevolence, if that's the word. There's a lot of goodwill in the community to share. It's a small community that's getting bigger, and I don't understand either why it is like this, but I can only enjoy it while it lasts, or it might be like this forever. But I always contrast it to my main business, which is we authenticate luxury items for people, so sneakers, clothing, bags, watches. And there, because I tried on this kind of like how you try on clothes, I tried on this idea of building a public a year and a half or two ago when I first heard about it, and it just didn't seem like a good strategical fit for me, because first of all, my audience isn't specifically on Twitter, or they might not be interested in that. They might, but might not. And then another thing that held me back was the culture of the place, which was, because in the luxury, and it sounds bad, but that's how it is. So I'm not adding any emotion into it. I'm just stating facts here, or what looks to me like facts. Because the luxury industry is based on feelings of so-called sins, as religious people will call it, of the feeling of I have and you don't, or look at how great I'm because I'm wearing this, or let's judge somebody else's outfit, or in a more basic way, it is based not solely on that. There's also a sense of community, but there is also a strong sense of not greed, what's the word, envy or stuff like that. There are many more negative emotions in that industry, and that doesn't happen that much with SaaS, because if somebody comes and if I share some numbers, somebody comes and says, oh, stop bragging, or stop showing off, some other people might come in and say, this guy is building, you're wasting time just doing nothing. So what are you doing? Why aren't you building? And this is, it might look like toxic positivity, and there is that risk of toxic positivity as well. It's not all perfect, but it's a different place. It's a different culture. It's a different, it's like you're going to a different party. And I have on my list of whether it was mental or on paper, on my list of resources of the industry, things that are in this area, in this place, I have had, without a doubt, this thing of, wow, these guys are way more positive, these guys and girls, I should say. And it's, it's, that's just how the party is. Like, you help each other, and that's how it goes. As I said, there are also risks involved with that. Maybe toxic positivity, maybe having an echo chamber, maybe, look, let's bring on some negative stuff as well. Maybe with all this positivity, you're gonna fall into that trap of, you thought you had your product validated because everybody's nice and says, yeah, I'll definitely use that. And when the time comes to take money out of their pocket, they're not doing it. Maybe that kind of harshness from this other industry or from some other industries is useful as well. So it's all balancing itself sooner or later, I would say.
There's also it always reminds me that around, asking the right kind of questions. If I say to you, do you think this product is nice? You're probably going to say yes, right? You don't want to hurt my feelings. But if you dig in a little bit further, like, do you have the problem that we're trying to solve, is a way more interesting way, I think, to get to a truthful answer. But have you ever had anything negative that's happened from building in public that made you go, maybe this isn't for me?
Nothing that made me say this isn't for me, because on paper at least, and it still feels like that to me, the benefits outweigh the cost, and that's really what business is. So in my main product, we're still trying to crack a way to say, because we're going to embed in the way people buy, we're going to see how much money goes through your Stripe purchases. And I'm trying to find a way to count specifically how much extra money comes from us, because we have the opportunity, we also have the responsibility to do it now. So we can say, okay, we charge $99 a month, but it seems like you've only made 29.8 extra dollars because of us. Maybe don't pay us. Like, we want to embed that into the product. And likewise, we're going to say, oh, it looks like we've gotten you at least $1,000 more this month because you paid 99. So that's going to be strong as well. If we manage to crack this thing. Why? Because ultimately business, one of the lenses with which you can look at business is, I'm putting in X and I'd love to get back X plus Y. How much that Y is subject to, each product, and you want to increase that Y. But that's what an expense is. That's when you look with your accountant, or with, when you need to reduce costs because you need to tighten that the operation, you're going to look at how much is that Y, because if the gap isn't wide enough, we're cutting off this expense. But to get back to your question, obviously there's been some on and off negativity in terms of why are you sharing this, who gives a shit, stuff like that. But it's once again back to, does the benefit outweigh the cost? And I was used to it, and I had my skin thickened. I don't know whether it's thick or not, but it has been thickened by my main business, where we've seen that in the past. And nothing that made me say this isn't for me, especially because it's what I'm doing now. Not my main business, Price Unlock, the SaaS that I'm building, is for SaaS product. So it looks like a perfect fit. Like, maybe if you're doing a SaaS for, I don't know, lawn mowers, It might not be a 100% fit to build in public to other SaaS builders. But if lawnmowers are on X platform where you're building in public, for sure.
Mm. And why do you think that SaaS is? Sorry, there's a siren about to go past my
No
house.
worries. I know you live in London because of that siren. You're not lying to me. I understand you're telling the truth. That was proof.
Sirens everywhere.
Yeah.
See, sometimes I'm sat here still going. Sometimes I'm sat here and I'm like, sorry, hold on. There's a truck reversing under my window. Give me a second. Um, why SaaS? What is it about SaaS as a type of business, as a way of building that got you excited?
I'm super excited about it. That's maybe my smile proves that. I think I spent some time thinking about that. What is it about subscriptions specifically? And SaaS, because it's SaaS as well, but my main business is a digital service. So that authentication is you pay us and you send us pictures, we come back with a verdict. It's a human, there's no AI, nothing like that, because it can't reach 99% plus accuracy. But it's a digital service, and I'm super excited about subscriptions as well. And you could say SaaS is a subset of this bigger circle subscriptions. The answer is this: it's a way fairer system than what we had before. It might not be the best, but here's the thing. Before, with lifetime prices or with one-off purchases, and anybody who's bought Adobe before they changed to Creative Cloud can attest to this. And Adobe is a huge company, but let's think about a smaller software vendor. You would buy this from them, and then it's see you in 2 years when we might release this new stuff. Support the graph of quality of support, or this the love in this engagement used to go down, because I sold this to you for 199. Sure, I will help you, but I won't be jumping out of jumping with excitement to come and help you with that customer support thing. And as time goes, you get more apathetic to the, if that's the word I'm thinking of, to the business, because it does get hard, it does wear on you, and it doesn't happen all the time. But think about the average software vendor that does that, as opposed to right now we're in a fairer contract, because you can vote with your money every month or every year. But even then, you could say, look, I don't read, this isn't helping me. I paid you $108. I got that $12 discount, but could you please give me a refund? And because you have to basically keep showing up every month, there's more in it for the consumer, but there's also more in it for you, because the contract, the unwritten contract of SaaS is, you pay us this amount and we promise to take care of the software, make it better. And if we don't, you are free to go away to our competitors or to build it yourself or to do whatever. But we are showing up every month.
Yeah.
And there's more in it for me to do that customer support, whether I'm small, whether I have a team, because I know that even something like customer support, investing into that can bump that percentage up by 5%, the percentage of whatever, of word of mouth or NPS, whatever it is. And that can lead to more. So the metrics are more on yours, or there's more in it for you to influence the metrics, as opposed to the old way of, we got your money, 2-hour customer support, make that 8 hours because I'm tired today. Leave that for later. I'll just reply at night when I get home, maybe.
And that frequency of, if you're buying a physical product, if you're buying a pair of trainers, you might buy, I don't know, one a year. You're not engaging constantly. And something I think about a lot from a growth perspective is, when it's not a subscription, you convince somebody like once, maybe twice a year to buy your product, if that. So many people don't actually ever buy the same thing twice anymore.
Exactly.
Whereas
And
it's every single month I have to do something that convinces you to stay.
Yeah. And it develops that relationship, because in that you make a decision once for buying, and you don't make a decision every month when you're getting charged again, unless you're on the fence, because you're going to look at that email saying, hey, we're going to charge you in 3 days, just a quick reminder. And you might think this is the time to cancel. But then it's an active thing ongoing. And what that means is there's a lot of surplus left. And this is why businesses love subscriptions, because $1 that comes from a subscription is not equal to $1 that comes from a one-off transactional, at least in a public company. uh, uh, balance sheet or valuation model. But what I think is really interesting is that because there's that surplus, you have more leeway to maybe grant that extra refund or to build that kind of relationship that is, people used there's a lot of uh, there's a big bullish sentiment on everything is going subscription, and also a lot of bearish sentiment on that. But I heard this thing once, which might be a bit too romanticized, might be a bit too optimistic, but I would be looking forward to having that live, which is every time I switch my car, I need to make a decision, and that's an event where I might be jumping from Mercedes to BMW or to somebody else. So this person I look up to called Scott Galloway, some people might know him, the Prof G show and all that, was saying, why don't I just pay X amount per month? And I'm in a relationship with Mercedes now. And in the summer, I get a convertible. And then when autumn comes, I realize how stupid a convertible is. And I want that truck because I need to go somewhere else. And I'd love that utility because I don't have anything to do with that convertible.
Go into a physical product. I guess it's happened in some places. People like Rent the Runway, where you're renting. I mean, you probably know about them being in that kind of luxury brands market as well. But rather than me buying a £700 dress and wearing it once and then regretting it, you can get new stuff each month. And it's interesting sometimes when you see those kind of companies who then self-describe as tech companies first and product companies second, even though what they're actually supplying to the consumer is physical products. I find that really interesting. One of the things I've really noticed in the SaaS community is how many people build multiple projects, which is different again from other places. If I was going to start a food business and I was going to start selling pancakes, right? I'm not going to then also start a clothing shop, and it's too much hassle. Like, what is it that you think about it is about SaaS founders that makes them these kind of compulsive builders, constantly building new things, even down to those trends like building one product every month for a year? What is it that's different about that?
It's a good question. First of all, it has to do with a low cost of putting these up because you don't have to get into a 10-year lease and all that. Mm-hmm. Second of all and of course, things like Stripe, back to the first point, things like Stripe that make it easy, GoSquared, which saves you a lot of time, and multiple products that help you eliminate a lot of the fixed costs time-wise and maybe price-wise as well. The moment when we were bored, this phase of the internet. Then it's also about understanding and a lot of advice being shared online. So it comes in the same package, just like in my luxury, in the fashion industry, it comes with the package, this possible emotional load from some people. It comes in the package, this thing in the SaaS industry, this thing of people are gonna, or in the tech, I should say, in the tech community, people are gonna share through the internet. Obviously, they're gonna people write code, so writing words isn't that far different, just another language. How you write that is part two. But there's a lot of wisdom shared. And one of these things, one of the most important things that is shared is this idea of training yourself for making that product that might lead somewhere. So I'm not saying it will, but what I'm trying to say is obviously you're going to have more experience after 10 products in 10 months. All of them might go to shit, might go to nothing. But at least you've trained yourself, because when you make that 11th product, which you are going to do it very seriously, you're not going to be time boxed. You're going to say, well, it takes me 6 months or 2 years to build. It's going to be my main thing. You have all that training from, because it's kind of like when you study for an exam or when you train as an athlete, the night before the exam or before the Olympics trial, you can't do anything more. You could try stuffing all that info into your head, but what you do at the trial or at the exam is the more or less, some things can come up, but more or less is the average of what you've done across all these sessions of studying or of training. The way you move your hand has been conditioned by all the 987 times you've moved your hand in a certain way and you tried perfecting that. So it's not like you can do something before the night of the trial, or you can, okay, I guess with studying you could, but that's just a different take, to procrastinate and leave it all to the night before. So it's that same sort of thing of, in 10 products in 10 months, you've learned a couple of things that might make your hand move naturally in a certain way, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah. And also I think it kind of links back to what you were saying earlier around people being willing to share mistakes and share failures. I think that my experience of the SaaS community is people are, maybe it's because of that low risk, right? Like it's you and your computer, and it's you've not bought £10,000 worth of stock that you're then stuck with in your living room, right? Like you built something, it didn't quite work. Like it's quite easy to change and iterate, but maybe because of that low risk way of being able to build things, people don't view failure in the same way as you might in a corporate world, or you might in a different kind of startup or a different kind of project. There's this real, and that's where the whole kind of growth marketing and the growth mindset comes from. It's like nothing is a failure, it's always a learning, and we take that and we get something from it and we keep moving. And I think for me that's something that really underpins this community, is that willingness to give something a go, and if it doesn't work, fine, I'll move in a different direction and I'll try something else. It's not this the world scenario. And I think that really underpins the communities, and of people being willing to give feedback and willing to take feedback, which is the other half of that equation, which isn't always fulfilled. Taking feedback is rarer than it should be, I think.
So I think you summed that up really, really nice, because I can also try summing it up even more, which is the economics are in your favor. It's like if you go to the industrial, I don't know, I don't have an example, to an industry which is very heavy, a lottery ticket there is $10, but in SaaS, a lottery ticket is 10 cents, 10p. So when the lottery tickets are cheaper, you are going to play more often, given the same, more or less same benefit. And of course, it's not a lottery ticket, because it's not like you make something, you pray to God that it will work, but you have more chips to put into these slot machines. And as you said, something doesn't work, or something works but is, and I think this is really interesting as well, something works but is kind of dragging his feet. Maybe I'll start something else, because as Justin Jackson, who we just had for an AMA, said, it's gradual and then it's sudden. Or he was quoting this other gentleman, Derek Sivers, who said something, I'm paraphrasing a lot here, so I'm really sorry if I messed it up, but he said something along the lines of, if it doesn't, not skyrocket, if it doesn't click, just move on. And yes, there's a lot of nuance there of, you can't just try for a day. But the thing is, as you said, if I have a portfolio of small bets, as the saying goes now, which I think is a very nice and wise, bit-sized, memorable notion. If I have a portfolio of small bets that can get me 2,000 MR, which isn't great, it is something, but isn't that thing I was aiming for, nothing stops me from putting them a bit on the side and keep trying until I get something that, why? Because the economics are in your favor at the moment, at least, and probably going to still be on the setup side. On the industry side, like more and more products are going to be built, but I think we're far from saturation of SaaS product and all that. And then we're going to leave them behind. A better, fairer contract is going to come up, and so on and so on. It's the same way we left. I'll just end with this. We, at one point, we had feudalism, or that thing called with vassals in the medieval ages, and we thought that was the best. Or we had monarchy, and we thought that was the best because we believed this person had the gift of God. And then we left that behind because we found some seemingly better, at the moment, contracts, which obviously have their
There's
flaws.
ways to improve. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we keep moving on, leave behind, find something better, and so on and so on.
Mm. And with those portfolios of small bets, do you think that what I still haven't worked out about SaaS founders is, are they completely compulsive builders? So, you know, in the example you're giving, right? So I've got 5 different projects and they're all making like a few £1,000, $1,000 revenue a month, but like none of them have gone big. Then what happens if one of them does? One of them starts making 100K, 200K a month. Would you, and I don't know, you can't speak for every SaaS founder, but I feel like you've spoken to a lot of them, right? Would you go, okay, right, that's it, I'm all in on this. This one has worked. That's where my time is going the whole time.
Right.
Or would you still feel tempted, or would you think this kind of type of founder still feels tempted by going, yeah, but I still kind of want to build this new thing over here as well?
Yeah.
Like, is the aim still to end up with one big project? Or is the aim to have as many little projects as you can? Little, could be any size, right?
It's a good question. I can see the nuance behind the question because you might jump to the conclusion of, oh, something worked, just leave everything behind because you need to focus all that. But I understand what you're saying, which is don't keep all your eggs in one basket. Or what if it comes natural to you? Because there's nothing wrong with you if you have something that's working and you keep wanting to do, you're fine with the idea of keeping on building stuff. And I can give you 2 examples. There's um, Josh Pickford from Barometrics who had Barometrics and he sold. He didn't say, I'm dying with this. And then there's Jason Fried from Basecamp who said this might end. And actually, I should mention that they had, what was it, 4, 5 apps? And then they sunsetted everything else. And they even renamed the company based on their main success, Basecamp. And now they're doing something else as well. They have 2 products.
Mm.
And Jason said, if I die with this company, that's fine. If the company dies before me, that's also fine. We're just gonna keep riding this wave until it shuts down, and that's it. So
Yeah.
I guess is down to the founder. Some people want to keep building stuff. Josh is like that. He built Barometrics, fair success. He sold it, and he said, I sold this so I can keep building stuff. Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. Like, the closest I've got to kind of figuring out the psychology behind it is that it's in the same way that this kind of community of SaaS founders building in public, indie hackers, whatever we want to call them, they think about failure as an opportunity for learning rather than a failure. I think there's also a different definition of success. Success in a traditional corporation is, people brag about stuff like, oh, I raised X amount of money, or I grew my team I now have a team of 300 people, right? Like, that's the kind of traditional corporate marker of success, is like running a bigger team. Whereas the founders that I speak to, they're like, how can I do this without hiring anyone? I don't want to hire someone. I don't want to manage someone. And when they're looking at their businesses, they're going, okay, so what do I actually want out of this? I want to be able to work on what I want when I want. I want to be able to make money from this without being told what to do by someone else. So whether that's creative independence, financial independence, where you live, remote work independence. And they want to feel creatively challenged. And I think there's been a bit of a letting go of these traditional markers of success in this community, which I think is probably really healthy from a world perspective, not just for the people in it. The more different ways we can frame success, the better.
Right.
And that's something I see a lot, is maybe it isn't about being able to show off the big numbers, and maybe that's what makes people like you more confident about going, like, this is where I am on my journey and this is where I'm trying to get to, and I'm going to show you the ups and downs on the way, because that's all part of it, and the whole journey is enjoyable, not just this kind of mythical end goal, which we all know that overnight success is nonsense anyway.
Right.
7 years of work that sat behind that date in the calendar. But
Yeah.
I do find it really interesting, that framing of what success looks like. Do you see
Mm.
that at all in like our SaaS and your community? Like, do you see?
I have something to add, which is spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
It with the risk of it sounding like a platitude, I'm gonna say it, and then I'm gonna try giving a more practical at the end. I've heard this thing which reframes stuff for me from a book that I was on another podcast, and I said this thing of, because they were asking me, what do you do outside work? And I said, well, I don't have I don't have an interesting answer, guys. Like, is mainly work because I don't know, it's cliche, but I like it. But then we got into books, and I said I just keep rereading the same books. And one of these books is saying that uh, it's this thing I've mentioned earlier, which I've heard, which reframes stuff for me, that you cannot become successful, you can only be successful, which is telling me more about that place out of which you're creating. Because it's that cliche of, it's not the journey, it's the journey that matters, not the destination. um because I believe that's how our brains are wired. Our brains are wired for the journey, not for the reward. Because once you get the reward, there's no incentive for your brain to keep giving you that, whatever it is, neurochemical, whatever wires are set in a different, in a certain way. So the brain mainly works as you get closer to the reward, to the uh, fruit, or to the source of sweet, to the honey. And once you have it, okay, you have your bump, but then what's next? The brain doesn't have to work anymore, because that's, the incentives are not aligned anymore. So this thing of, you can only be successful, not necessarily become successful, is somehow intertwined with these two concepts I'm struggling to put together now. How the brain is wired, and how is the journey, not the destination, that matters. But it touches upon what you said, which is, yes, what's the metric of success? Is it headcount? Is it how much money I raised? And then the SaaS people said, hold on a second, I don't want any of that. Maybe I will hire some people so I can have not only financial and creative freedom, but have the holy trifecta, which is time freedom as well.
Yeah.
So I can go, I'll get the customer support team, and maybe a product person, or I can go hiking or do whatever I want. That's the holy, and that's success on your terms. And that's why I think you can only be successful, and that resonated with me, because it's, the metrics are on your own terms. And part of success, part of this notion that is very hard to define, that is commonly regarded as success, is it's on your own terms. When people think about, and I hate this notion of fuck you money, I really hate the wording, but when people think of that, it's, the main point is it's on your own terms, because nobody would want to be the top exec at Amazon who's making, I don't know how many, 8 figures, but they have to answer to Jeff or to Andy now, or to the investors, or to the board. People want that 50 million a year while being on their own terms,
Yeah.
or time freedom, or creative freedom.
Mm.
And yes, I think part of being successful is defining on your terms, and even working towards that goal can make you successful, because it's, these are the two concepts I'm struggling to put together. Let me think of something more practical, so that if this all was a platitude, I can give people who I can be respectful of people's time, people who listen to this. Um, let's see. Yes, I think people kind of got tired of being told what success is, and they said, I'm basically rephrasing what I was saying earlier. They said, look, it's not headcount, because I don't want to have many employees. It's not how much money I'm raising, because I'm not doing that. So that's outside of this realm. So why take that? And then they look at some people who had the courage to put themselves out and said, like Peter Levels, like Jason Fried and David from Basecamp, like so many other examples. And they said, oh, I like what they have, because it looks great. And I didn't know this was an option. The same way many people say, I didn't know entrepreneurship was an option, because it wasn't glorified in the early 2000s or in the 90s or whatever. And then I found out it is something, and it sounded great, and I got into it. Yeah. defining success on your own terms. And what else did you say? You talked about failure and how people respond to it.
Yeah, I think in the same way that it's just a reframing of the whole kind of career journey, isn't it? It's not just that failure is okay, because it's not really failure. It's just kind of a pathway to something different. And success as well. Like that's the most common thing I hear is, I don't want to be told what to do. I just want to be able to choose what I work on, and and when I work on it. And do you find that of the kind of SaaS founders and builders that you come across, are they technical first, or are they kind of marketing business first?
A mix, but I'm not technical, so I might be biased because I
Yeah,
speak
me
to
neither.
I speak to technical people and I speak to all kinds of people, but I'm guessing you could get into an echo chamber if you're technical, speak only or mostly to technical people. But another thing I wanted to add to this point where my second answer wasn't as strong is I also think it has to do with the following thing. When you read a book, or it used to be just books, but now I guess it's articles or even tweets or whatever, you basically, if the person has done a good job and you've done your job at trying to understand what they said, you're saving yourself some time and some wisdom that you might have found by yourself. And I guess it's part of that transfer of knowledge that some people got there, wherever there was the big head count, and they found out this isn't really what I wanted, because I got here and I thought it was going to be heaven, but this isn't heaven. This is just another milestone, and I'm still looking at the next one, and I'm still in the hamster wheel. And yeah, and then there was this reframing of, just like what I was saying earlier, we had a system, biggest head count, biggest amount of money raised, and people believed that, and then they found out that that wasn't the best thing to do. And for some people it is. It is just a matter of, like, if you are a monarchy worked for you. Like, who can tell you shit? Like, you're the son of the king.
Yeah.
Good luck enjoying the rest of your life. But then there were so many people for which this wasn't necessarily the best thing, and there were some people in between. So in the same way, this thing is, for some people this headcount thing works because that's how they are, and this was for some reason common wisdom. And then some other people got there, they said this isn't actually for me, and then they did that thing of, let me define it on my own terms, and they were nice enough to share it, and some other people got to define it on their own terms and avoided 10 years of their life, 15 years, 5 years, who knows, going into something they would later find out they didn't enjoy.
Yeah, there wasn't a fit for them. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm realizing we've been chatting for like 45 minutes, and I'm gonna have a hard time editing this down.
No worries.
Thank you so much.